Hello and welcome to the Juju Show number 32. So we're going to do this a quick one today because not a ton of stuff on the mailing list and folks were they try to sneak some things up on me. But I got James Beatty here. Beatty, welcome to the party again. How you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, Rick? Good to see you.
Yeah, I tell you what, a little bit of spring weather, a little bit of sun and rain instead of snow. I'm liking it. Next week is spring break, so come on, let's get this week over with.
Too good, man. Too good.
All right, so the Juju Core team tried to throw me off. They threw a new point release of 2.3 out an hour before the show today just to mess with me and see, can I keep up? And I caught up. So everyone, make sure to go upgrade your Jujus if you're using your snaps. They're all auto-updated, which I have to say, I have been loving using the snap Juju and just going like, ba-ding, it's auto-updated. I just don't even realize it and notice it, and I'll be on a machine, like I'll be on my Mac or something and be like, wait a minute, that's not the right version. And I'll have to go, oh, right, I need to update it, manually and everything. So if you're on the snaps, it's coming your way, but 2.3.5 is out with a really large, heavy handful of bug fixes, a couple criticals and things in that. But if you had a bug, if you see some bug traffic on there about fixed release, that's where it's released to 2.3.5. Get your upgrades on and get your bug fixes. Along with that, I wanted to call out something that Nicholas called out on the mailing list, which was there are 100 contributors to Juju. So we crossed the 100 triple digits folks with commits in GitHub to the Juju project itself, and that's just the Juju Core project. Obviously, if we included things like all the charm tooling and the charm store and all that stuff, that'd be a much bigger number. But I did want to kind of go, good job, party people, partying on with that Juju Core work, making it all go on. So, and if you were one of those that have participated and have that pull request or whatnot, I want to highlight and go, thank you for your service. This is awesome. And the third thing and last thing I got as far as community news stuff is there was some chatter around the Juju upgrades. There was someone hit an issue during an upgrade. It turned out to be a legitimate bug, I believe, which is getting worked on, or was worked on. But there was kind of feedback that upgrades in Juju could be better. And if you watched the show a couple of episodes ago, we talked about how this is very much true and about how some internal teams wrote a plugin to help manage upgrades with Juju, and does a nice way of like it helps handle multiple models in it and really show the state of all your models, because you kind of forget that once I upgrade my controller, hey, my control plane is running the new version, but all the little other models themselves need to be updated. All those units, all the agents running on each of the units, they need their little time in the sun to get upgraded. And managing that can be less than fun when you have lots of models running in your Juju controller. So the conversation was, how can we make this better? And what we're doing right now is the engineering team is getting ready to plan for the next cycle. 1804 is coming really soon. So watch out for the new LTS release. But I know the engineering teams will all be together to do planning for the next 6-month cycle coming up shortly, and the upgrade topic is on that list, and that means we'll put in some time with various architects and with the teams and kind of see what we can do about improving the upgrade experience. I know I've put some notes down and talked to the lead of Core about, hey, some of the stuff to make sure that we look out for and a lot of the lessons we can learn from the current plugin tool. So if you want to help, the best thing you can do is to try out the plugin tool and provide your feedback. What do you like about it? Which bits really do help you manage your at-scale infrastructure, and which ones are like, yeah, I didn't need that. Because it's always good to get some real-world feedback from a variety of different viewpoints on what is helpful and important and what's snowflakey, what stuff does one person go, oh, that's good for me, but isn't good for everyone else or whatnot. So try it out, provide feedback, and we're looking to get it on the roadmap for this next cycle to really make some big improvements on that. So hopefully that'll come in the near future. Not tomorrow future, but not so far out future, right? That's all I got. Anything going on in your world, BD?
Taking a second gander at the Jupyter Notebook charm.
Well, remember there was the guy in the community that was working on one out of a university in Italy or whatnot, and that was the one I was playing with that I demoed a long while ago. So make sure to go check out that blog post I did on the Jupyter Notebook stuff and see. I haven't seen what activity has gone on there lately, but I would start there for sure.
Oh, nice. You've already got a blog post. I should have figured as much.
See? Been there, done that. You got to pay attention. Keep track.
Sweet deal. Thanks, Rick.
All right, cool. I'll highlight that in the show notes. And for show and tell, I had a problem of I wanted to be able to create databases in MySQL, but and so the way this works now is great, right? Like here, let's get the screen share on. Let's do my Chrome window. So here I've got in Jazz here, I've got MySQL up and running, and I'm dropped in GitLab. And if I were to go through and create this relation, right, when this kicks in, it'll create an empty database with a new user and password in MySQL, and it'll ship that over to the GitLab charm and go, hey, here's the credentials and the database for you to use, right? Because I think one thing that we can do more of is databases can still be complicated when you're running them at scale, when you have failover and backup situations and all that kind of really production-grade database stuff you need. So we want to enable you to reuse this MySQL for multiple users, not just for one charm or not just a charm in this model. Cross-model relations are a great example. Run a really scaled-out database infrastructure. Use cross-model relations to reuse that infrastructure for databases across all your different services you run. But I wanted a database without I didn't have something to relate to. I had some scripty stuff on my own laptop, but I'm like, hey, I just want a blank database and some connection info and let it rip. And I got thinking that, well, there's already all this code that does this in the charm for the relation, but I don't want it. How can I fake it? And it brought up a point that I think sometimes that folks forget is that charms support the idea of actions. So I kind of forked this off to play with it, and I added an action YAML to it, and then you add an actions folder where you put the scripts that actually run when the action is triggered. And so here's a quick little, and I should probably crank this up a bit. Here's a little create DB action where it will just create a database, and you can specify parameters so you can allow users to do things like specify a prefix to the database name, so I can all mine or prefixed, Rick or something. I don't know. In this case, it's a username just to identify who is the user who's creating the database. Could probably pull it based on the Juju user doing the action, but for the moment, I just hard-coded that. And then basically that's turned into a required, argument. And so if I go through, now I have, this code in here that I kind of copied out of the hooks code that runs whenever someone creates a relation, right? And so we go through and we do things like we make sure that, if we generate a new database name, that it's not in the list of current database names and all that, and it returns it. So what's cool is we can just kind of run it in here. I can run this action. I'm going to wait on the result of the action instead of letting it queue up. On MySQL, I'm going to run the create DB action, and my user is Rick. And so now when I run this, voila, this is the database name to use, the host to use, the password that's randomly generated for it, and a random user account. So I have everything I need to build a connection to this MySQL database in order to leverage it for my code. And I can run it as many times as I want. And then I got thinking, what's really kind of cool? Juju run action, all it's doing is making an API call, right? So if we do this with debug on it, you'll see it's just making a WebSocket connection and making an API call. So it's kind of interesting. You could actually deploy charms out and put like a web front end on the actions enabled in the charm to do operations. And you could easily see things like if we support Redis, MySQL, and Postgres in the company, having them all have very similar actions defined, even though they're doing totally different stuff, right? The way you create an empty database in MySQL is very different from the things you need to do in Postgres. And it just kind of got me going, I feel like it would be interesting for folks that are relying on relations to trigger operations code in the charm to think about whether they might be useful outside of that context, like just as an action, and reuse that code between the two things in order to help make operations kind of more useful in more situations, right? And, so you can see from here, I might add things like, listing out the databases that are in my database and who owns them or whatnot. Maybe I want to enable deleting a database and dropping that from the system via kind of over the API. I don't know. There's lots of things you could think to do here, but it was something I was playing with and I thought was kind of handy. And I kind of wish more charms had more actions to help encapsulate the operations, because I don't know about you guys, but every time I have to go add a new database thing in, I always have to Google up again. Wait a minute, what's the correct syntax for the grant command in MySQL so that I can make sure I get it set right so that they have permission to the new database that I just created or whatnot. And, Postgres is the same way. I always have to look back up again. All right, wait. What's the magic syntax for doing that? The command line. I guess you don't do it often enough to memorize it like you do normal querying techniques and stuff like that. So I guess this is Rick would love for more charmers to write more actions to encapsulate more operations and make it easier for me to help use awesome stuff. What do you think, man? Are you down with the actions train?
That's great, Rick. Great actions. I'm way down with the actions. It looks like there's been a lot of good work put into getting the actions to where they are, but it looks like maybe reactive has a little bit of work to catch up. I don't know if you paid much attention to the issue where we, if you Hulk smash two charms onto the same machine, or maybe have a subordinate on the same machine as another charm, the end can get a little messy. So,
well, but wait, you're a couple weeks behind on that though, right? So just a couple weeks ago, we hit this. I will say that my team was working on updating and using more modern reactive techniques in charms in production, where the Nagios charm has a subordinate. Everything has to run on Nagios. It has a Nagios attached to it, which was an older code and hadn't been updated because, honestly, it works. You don't spend a lot of time fixing what's not broken. But it had a much older charm helpers library version in it. And so what would happen would be is we'd have our charm would get on there and have all the new code, and then the Nagios would come on as a subordinate later, and it would replace the charm helpers with an older version, and then our charm would start blowing up whenever any of the hooks got triggered, because it was like, whoa, I don't find that anywhere where you say it is. And because of that and the commonness with it, there's a thread on the mailing list, but the reactive framework has changed to using virtual environments by default. So now, out of the box, by default, if you have your charm and a subordinate charm, they will default to using virtual environments for each one. So they have their own copies of charm helpers and their own paths. The negative side of that is if you are doing stuff like, I think, triggering actions, and you need to shell out to code or whatnot, you need to make sure your virtual environment's activated, or that you're using the right path for the right Python binary or whatnot. I think there's another case where that's true, but I'm totally with you. That's a problem, and I'm happy to see the change. I know we got our stuff out to production with that by using the virtual environment. And to be clear, if you're using older versions of the reactive framework, you can still say use a virtual environment for this. It's a config setting. It's just that it was defaulting to false up until just recently, where that now defaults to true, right?
Look at that. You've got all the answers, man. Once again.
Hey, that's my job, to stay one step ahead of you, man. That's one step. So yeah, if you need that, we talked about it, I think, in the last episode, in the news, and that's off the mailing list thread. So go check that out. And it tells you how to flip the config and kind of what the repercussions are. But I think it's definitely much better. It's just a much more sane default, right? Always default to the most sane path, but enable power users and stuff to escape out. So, alrighty. That's all I got. Actions are cool. It's one of those, these are cool. We should do more of these. And I thought I'd share and kind of poke and prod folks. So, anything else you got, James?
I'm good, man. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for hanging out with us today and talking some Juju. And see you all in 2 weeks. Have fun.
Hey, take care.